Hello. Good enough movement. That's the topic today. Cynthia Allen here. And I want to talk about this idea that maybe our movement is good enough, not good enough. What would that possibly mean to us? I remember in my Feldenkrais training, in the early years of that training, someone's boyfriend came in and watched the class and then said, "This is like movement for dummies." And actually, she was an extremely fine mover, high-end mover, and she certainly saw the need for it. But him watching, he couldn't see the need for it. In contrast, I was somebody who'd always struggled with movement. So we were in the same class, both dedicated for 4 years to the training process. And there was a reason for that. And I want to see if we can break apart that reason. Now, if you are on Facebook or YouTube, there's a little thing that says register real quickly your name so that when you make comments, I'll be able to see your comments. So please feel free to do that, and feel free to pop a little thought or question or whatever over there into the comments, and I'll get to it. And it'll make me not feel alone too if you want to just say hi. Okay, so here we go. You are born to move just good enough. Now, this is going to be, I think, for many of you, a kind of revolutionary idea. You have to come into this world. You don't have to. You come into this world. You then establish your ability to regulate your most basic biological functions like respiration and temperature. And once those are in place, what starts to run in the background is a sort of inbred instinct that we see in all animals. And that instinct is to acquire a skill good enough so that you can move on to acquire the next skill. Now, we have seen versions of this, right? When we watch those incredible nature shows on PBS, and there's a gazelle that gives birth, and the little gazelle is up and walking, well, usually up within a very short period of time, like 30 or 40 minutes, and then actually walking with the mother, with the herd, and then starting to try to keep up within a matter of hours. Now, the gestation period for human beings is quite a bit longer than that, because we're really actually born much more unformed than many animals. We are much more like how a kangaroo's babies are born and then needs to be kept, cuddled, and held. And for our basic biological maturation of being able to keep up with the family, that's more like 2 to 3 years if everything goes well. So what happens is that there is a deep drive in the system. I call this good enough learning because there's a deep drive in the system to acquire a skill that is good enough that allows you to go on to acquire the next skill. There isn't a, hey, let's stop and perfect this skill. There's some kind of, though, measurement internally that goes on that lets the being know, that lets you, that did let you as a human being know, oh, I've done enough of this. I feel some level of understanding and mastery, and I can now start to explore something else. Now, you don't have conscious thoughts related to this. This is extremely unconscious, but it's an extremely important piece to understand. So basically, what this means is that in the goal for us to be able to become able to hunt for food, okay, find food, not to be food, and to have a choice about our mate, this is the big survival drive that is in each of us. And it's a little bit hard sometimes to stay clear about that drive when we live in cultures that are particularly further and further away from the land, and we have so many helps and conveniences, and we don't feel the pressure of eyes watching us, right? If we're out in the desert, we're out in the forest. I mean, actually, if you spend a night out in the forest without a tent, I mean, a tent is a bizarre item right there that gives people a sense of security when really it's not, right? But if you have the sense that eyes are watching you, you would want this ability to be able to get up and move quickly. Now, there are people in our cultures that are living in that kind of an environment for sure. But it's not the norm for a lot of us. Probably the people who are listening to this, it's not the norm. So we basically still have, though, running that biological profile that says, hey, I can survive in this world. I can survive in this world, and I might have some choices about getting to choose who I end up mating with. These are really deep-seated. So if it turns around and you build on top of these skills that are already just good enough, and then you just keep building more and more skills, we can see that this can eventually, the substructure may not be strong enough, versatile enough, agile enough to hold up into the things that we want to do over time. And I just want to say thanks to those people who are saying hi. If you'd register your name, I'll be able to see your name, but I appreciate that a few of you that have said hi already. So, well, that's a pretty wild kind of idea, because what this means is that what's happening in your nervous system is all about this moment and trying to accumulate enough skills so that from moment to moment, you're able to make it. And that is going on all the time within the nervous system, trying to figure out, do I have enough to make it for this moment? One thing that the nervous system is not doing, it is not thinking about 30 or 40 or 50 years from now. Now, we're going to talk more about wear and tear and wear and tear in another talk in this little series that I'm doing, which is a series, by the way, that I'm doing for the next few days. We're going to talk more about that. But it becomes really important to realize that what gets us by now may not serve us for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And so some of us notice that there's a certain point in our life where suddenly, like, things don't work as good as they used to. We call that aging, but I would call that more likely the accumulation of bad movement patterns, less than ideal, that's a terrible word, less than ideal movement patterns over the years that all of us have encountered. When we have these just good enough movement patterns, they get us by for now, but then we start to put high-end repetitive function on top of them. Wow, okay, that's game on. So, it's interesting when there seems to also be a human compulsion, a human drive for repetitive action and to get good at it. And this must have something to do with how our minds perceive our ability to get food. I really think it does. I've thought about this a lot when I was in the work environment and watching how we all get stressed over a variety of things in the modern work environment as if it were survival. And I think our brain actually does for sure translate that as survival. It knows that this is our way of getting food. We make a living to get food. So if I think about, let's say, a bricklayer, you start out learning how to lay bricks. You're going to be clunky. You're going to be slow. There's a master over there that is out of this world. And then there's you, right? Or I picked up crochet a few years ago after having not done it since I was a child. And I'm like slowly, labor intensively, right? Trying to get the stitch and to count. And I remember my father-in-law, who was alive then, said, "Whoa, that is some work. That's hard work you're doing, right?" And then after a few hours of exploration, I'd suddenly have an increase in speed. And then I would be a little bit faster for a while, and then I would suddenly have another increase in speed. And I wouldn't say that I completely ignored myself, but I did override a lot of cues of discomfort in order to keep going. And most of us need to do that while learning a task. Actually, it's difficult to both manage getting good at the task and getting good at it within your body. That's an interesting concept, right? There's a mirror process going on. There's the task that we're getting good at. Oh, do my stitches look even? Oh, do my bricks look even? Oh, can I get this job done in time? Am I having to do a lot of extra laying down of mortar, or is it getting sloppy? We tend to be really focused on that which is out there and that which we are producing. But there's a production of what's going on inside of our body. We're also literally forming our bodies based on how we're doing the task. So that we have very few options or training around good enough, more than rising above, more than good enough movement. Now, there are some people that will indeed rise above that, at least for certain types of things, right? If they are high-end producing musicians or athletes, these folks will typically spend a lot of time on the actual improvement of how they do something. And if they don't, they eventually run into a problem, and then someone says, okay, we need to try to unlearn the way that you've been doing that swing. We need to try to unlearn the way that you've been playing that instrument or holding that instrument, and let's see if we can readdress that again. So where does something like the Feldenkrais method fit in? Because it's kind of a weirdness, isn't it? Thank you. I'm glad you think it's super. Facebook user. I appreciate that. It's kind of a challenge because we're very non-judgmental in the Feldenkrais method. We want to be accepting. We're not walking around saying, oh, there's a bad mover, there's a good mover. And we're not wanting people to get hung up in perfectionism, because that creates a kind of compulsiveness, so that you can't really attune and be present to yourself. Perfectionism is really something done for reasons other than what feels good, feels efficient, feels life-giving, feels like, hey, this is better than the thing I was doing the moment before. And then here I am saying we ought to try to rise above good enough movement. So boy, there's a difficulty, right? But I do think that for all of us, whether we are a really high-end mover, maybe from early in life, movement came to us naturally, easily, and we just got into it, or you're someone like myself who movement has actually been a struggle their whole life, more or less, and then you find the Feldenkrais method and it becomes gradually less of a struggle, right? But you wouldn't put me beside some guy or gal doing parkour and say, hey, Cynthia's a fabulous mover compared to that person. I think that's highly unlikely, because they had apparently some natural capacity and maybe the way in which they were raised and their set of experiences that allowed them to really go with that. My skill set tends to be in this other direction, right? Of teaching, feeling, sensing, thinking, acting. But it's better for me, right? It's my movement is better than it was without this. And that means that for me, for you, whatever your goal is, if your goal is to have less pain, more mobility, more comfort, or maybe your goal is to do a better jump, a better roll, a better kick in MMA or some other type of sport, either one can use the Feldenkrais method to rise above their habitual good enough movement patterns. And we do this through these novel, curious explorations. And I'm going to talk about the importance of those novel, curious explorations when I talk in one of the next talks, which is what are all these movements of the Feldenkrais method about? So I'm going to give you some things here to think about for sure. Like, how is it that good enough movement, like things that I've never examined before? I remember when I was getting ready to fly to teach one of the Gate for Wild Human Potential workshops with Carol Montgomery, I was sitting next to a physician on the plane, and we were talking, and he said, well, what are you traveling for? And I said, I'm going to teach a class on walking. And he said, well, to who? And I said, to adults. Or, he said, why would you need to do that? Everybody knows how to walk. Well, if that's a common thought among physicians, and I've run into that more than once, I can tell you that we've got a big problem on our hands, because everybody knows how to walk just good enough. And it is the patterns in which most of us are walking that are causing a vast majority of our knee, ankle, hip, neck, back problems. Walking is one of the or then therefore, if you even go further into running, these are the high level demands on the physical body for the majority of people. And the way that we put pressure through the body, the way that we allow pressure to travel through, the way that we hone our relationship to the ground and uprightness, and how the body parts of ourselves coordinate and pay attention to our sensation, that is a big, big deal in health as we grow older. Not because aging is such a series of decline. I mean, there is ways in which aging is definitely trading skill sets and possibilities in and out. So there's so many things I'm so much better at now than I was when I was 30 or 40 or even 50. But there are some other things that maybe are not as accessible as I age, but there's a continual growth anyway. But this idea that our physical bodies are completely falling apart because we're aging, I really think that is much more about the lack of investment of moving beyond good enough movement. So that if we had approaches like the Feldenkrais method available to us early, and we started out as early as we could capture the imagination of the child or the teen or the young adult, as early as we could capture that imagination for the interest in qualities of movement, then I think we would have a vastly different aging situation. We'd have a whole skill set to take through with us. Now, I also think we'd have some different skills for thinking as well, but absolutely would make a difference. So I hope that you have a way of regularly engaging in the Feldenkrais method. If you do not have a regular way of engaging with it and you want to study with me, my Your Learning Body is open right now for people to join us, and it is only available once a year. You can go to yourlearningbody.com. You can join us for the original 9-week course, or you can join us for the membership. I mean, the membership was just such a fabulous experience for, I think, everybody last year. I mean, I've had so many comments on it. And tomorrow, 5 women at 10 o'clock, 5 women are going to tell their stories of transformation through the Feldenkrais method within Your Learning Body. So I think you will want to tune into that to 10 a.m. EDT time and hear those 5 different women talk briefly. They'll each have a short story about their situation. And right now, Your Learning Body open. It's only open until June 7th. So now would be the time that you would want to check it out, yourlearningbody.com. And I hope to see you at the next talks. And also I hope to see you inside of Your Learning Body. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the nice little audience there. Thank you, Jenny. Yes, life changer. It is a life changer. I just want to say that. Yeah. Oh, and somebody said, haha, my father always said to me, now quick, like a bunny, fast like a bunny. Yeah, really, fast like a rabbit. Yes, we really value widget production, making things quick. We so like that. Absolutely, we do. Okay, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.